Today I'm joined by a really good friend of mine that we only met in the last couple of years, but she has been a close friend, confidant, usually when she doesn't tell of other people.
Okay. At least I warn.
She warns me. We've been good friends and connected a lot about, some struggles that we both have been through and questions we both have been through. Today I'm joined by my good friend, Rosanna. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Can you imagine you said no?
No, I'm good. Let's just keep going.
Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm Rosanna. I do art. I'm a big fan of cartoons, many of which I am probably way too old for. But you know what? That's okay. Live your life. Enjoy what you want to enjoy. So all you can do.
That's
really.
the main message of today's episode. Yeah. To be fair, a lot of cartoons I watched as a kid were funnier when I was an adult.
Oh yeah, because they put the hidden jokes.
Right. So like SpongeBob is hilarious. It's just they had a lot of like jokes that as kids you don't really get, but like as an adult you're like, okay, that's kind of funny, or like that's kind of sexual.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't think you know what. Honestly, I think cartoons. I wonder if like cartoonists like make them for kids, but like to hide subtle things just for the adults,
Well, I think it's because it's like the kids are watching with their parents oftentimes, so then it's like we have to make it enjoyable for their parents too,
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. But yeah, just live your life. Do whatever you want. Just don't hurt people.
Exactly.
Or hate people.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Don't do that. Okay. So I mentioned earlier, Rosanna and I have been friends for the last 6 years. 6 years. Rosanna had joined my church choir via a friend named Catherine, who was on this pod, the very first episode of this pod. I think she just told you about the choir she was a part of. Is that? I don't remember how it happened.
Well, I was hitting like a low point in my life. I don't know if we want to get this deep this early. But basically I was like I had just had a relationship that had ended, and then I was
I remember
and I was like pursuing people that had like a party lifestyle, and then I sort of felt like I had to be that so that I could appeal to people I was interested in at the time, and then after a while of like partying a lot, I was kind of like, I don't think this is where I want my life to go, right? And I didn't feel like I was doing what I actually wanted to be doing, and I wasn't like entirely happy with it. So I was like, okay, what are things I'm passionate about, and like how can I get back into those things? And then I heard that Catherine was in a choir, and I've always really liked singing, and I didn't have an outlet for performing or doing anything like that anymore. So I asked her if I could join, and then I ended up going.
Wait, my question is, because you knew that it was at my church, right? Or did you just know it was just a community choir? Like,
I don't know if I was entirely sure.
Okay. I was just like, I wonder if that like made you hesitate at all. Just because like a lot of people when they think of church choir, they think of like hymns and like Jesus,
Yeah.
But our choir was not really much of that. It was a very fun crew. But because of that, because Catherine brought her to her choir, that's kind of how we met, and that's how you met your fiance.
It's true.
So I'm gonna say this: I'm a great matchmaker.
Okay, I if you want to go farther and farther back, you could technically say Catherine was a matchmaker, right?
But I was the one who had a community together. But you guys aren't the only ones. You guys know who you are. Anyway, sorry, but I can't match myself.
That's how it goes sometimes.
When you try your best for other people, but not yourself. Okay. Anyways, okay. So that's kind of how we met. You started going to our choir. I think you had fun.
Yeah, I did. It was very fun.
And then we just like, because of that, I think you started going to dive and fellowship and church, and like we just started hanging out a lot generally. Yeah. But before we go into that, Rosanna and I have met before. So we weren't friends, but we knew of each other's existence from years back.
Yeah.
This is one of the funniest things I like to share. Rosanna and I, when we were in high school, we both were a part of. Is the mic moving on?
Yeah. I keep hitting it by accident.
I'll fix it so it doesn't move much.
Okay.
You good?
Is this okay?
Gucci.
Okay.
Gucci gang. Okay. So in high school, Rosanna and I both were in something called the BCMEA Honor Choir, which is the British Columbia Music Education Association's honor choir. So basically, you audition to go into this choir, and then students from all over BC get to sing in this really cool audition choir. And so that's kind of where I first met of Rosanna's existence. But we weren't friends with Rosanna. I was friends with Rosanna's friend. Right? Yeah, I was friends with Rosanna's friend. I same with my friend Christina. And so, like, when I remember I saw you again, and I think you were dating that person that you talked about at one of our mutual friend Bella's birthday party downtown at that restaurant that's in the Bay Center area. Monkey's? No. Earl's? Anyways.
I don't know.
I just remember seeing Rosanna and being like, she looks really familiar. But we didn't talk because we didn't really know each other.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, so Rosanna, would you like to share with the audience just your thoughts of us in high school?
Okay. Well, Josh really likes to relish in this.
This is really good.
Okay, so basically, well, initially, because they had like separate smaller practice groups for people in certain areas, and I remember you were in the practice group, and then that I was in, and then I you were the only tenor, right? Yeah,
Yep.
you're the only tenor, and I remember being like, oh wow, he's so brave. He's the only one.
Is this like the island regional rep?
Yeah. I was like, oh, he's the only one. He's doing such a great job. And then and then I was like, good for him. That looks really scary, but yeah. And then we met for the full rehearsal with everybody. You were hanging out with Christina a lot. I don't know if names.
We'll leave out the other friend's name.
Okay. Yeah. And I saw you together, and I was just like, oh, these people are too cool for me. I was just really intimidated, and I was like, yeah, I can't be their friend.
It was hilarious that there are people. I think Rosanna was one of them, called the choir kids. And when I think choir kids, there's some of you guys know already. There are just a different species, okay? And I wasn't a choir kid. I was just a kid who was in choir because I just it was easy for me, and I was just oh, whatever, that's fun, I guess.
Said the singing major.
Yeah, but I wasn't never really a full on choir person. It was never my thing.
Right.
And so Matt, okay, this is an example, but at the BCMA Honor Choir, for those who were in those years of 2011, 2012, something like that. They sang Stella Stella Ola in 8-part harmony, and I thought that was just I thought it was so dumb.
I was having a blast.
She was having a blast. So these people just sitting in a giant circle singing Stella Stella Club and singing all these harmonies, and me, Christina, and our other friend would just sit there and be nah, this ain't the thing. See, so she's a different species.
Okay. Well, you know what they say about cringe behavior?
What?
Where it's don't kill the part of you that is cringe, kill the part of you that cringes. And I think that's really important.
So what are you saying about high school, Josh?
No, I mean that it's okay to be cringy, and you can just enjoy it.
I know I am cringy.
Yeah.
It's just I wasn't choir cringy.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyways.
And so that's how I actually initially met Rosanna, but then we officially got to know each other in 2016. So my question to you is because I don't think you didn't know I was the person in charge of it, right? You just kind of knew the choir. So when you saw me again, was there any other thoughts that went through your head, or was it just like, oh my gosh, it's that person again, or it's, oh my gosh, it's Christina again, or whatever? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, when we were at that dinner, I like recognized you, and I was like, oh, I know those people, but I don't really want to talk to them because I don't know if they know who I am, and like
I'm not cool enough for that.
Okay, no, at that point I was just like, I don't know if they know who I am.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How about at when you joined choir again, or when you joined our choir, did you have any like hesitations, or you're still kind of nervous at all? Or was it okay because like you kind of saw us as normal?
Well, I think at that point I was just like, oh cool, we were in honor choir together, like it was fine. Yeah, I think I was just also very like just very, what it was like, social anxiety, you know.
I do remember like there was like we had practice for a while, you came for a while, and I just remembered, I'm like, wait, were you in honor choir? Like,
oh yeah.
I remember bringing it up. You're like, yeah. And then, so this whole story, like the thing that Rosanna just shared, she shared this with me in like years after that. And I thought it was the funniest thing because Christina and I are not the cool kids. Like, we were just like the two Asians that were just sitting away from the Stella Ola crew.
Yeah.
Just by ourselves, eating our lunches. We were not cool. I don't want to portray that. I was not part of the cool crew at my school.
I was in the cool crew. I was doing the Stella Ola. That's how you know.
Okay. How you know. Rosanna was just different. It is built different. But yeah, I guess like continue on. Like we just kind of continue to know each other in the last couple of years. And were there any like, trying to think about like, was there a moment that like, I can't think of a moment that really was like a definitive moment that like I was like, oh yeah, I'm really good friends with her or with you. Like, do you remember any moments where you're just like, oh cool, I'm like Josh's friend, or like I don't really remember like a specific moment. It's pretty gradual, I think, in my mind.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like you're just very like welcoming to people, like new people in the choir and stuff. So I just like felt very like comfortable. Yeah.
And I don't actually remember like because we did like hang out during church and like choir, but I don't remember when we like started just to hang out like one-on-one. And I wonder, it was I think it was probably after I shared my testimony with you. I think it was kind of when we first started like chatting. I don't remember.
Maybe, yeah, like hanging out one-on-one.
Yeah. But I guess we can just skip to that. Like so 2015 was when, at the end of 2015 is when I got baptized, and then shared my testimony, and then 2016 is when I met Rosanna, like officially meeting Rosanna, and I didn't tell her about my testimony until a couple months after or something. I think it was the same year. But do you remember? I shared the recording of it, I think, to you.
Yeah, you sent me a recording.
Okay. Do you remember when you listened to it, any reactions to it or any thoughts?
I guess I just remember it being like very like emotional. In an interesting way, because I guess you were like telling me that you had like come out in this testimony, or I don't know if I had, I don't know if you were like vague about it and then you sent me the testimony. Yeah, and I listened to it and I was like, oh, I guess I was like surprised that you would come out in your testimony, because my experience of like church was that like those two things can't mix. So it was really interesting to me that that was like a part of your testimony.
Speaking of Rosanna's experience with church, you had told me earlier actually today that you grew up like in a Catholic church.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I grew up in a Catholic church. My family's Catholic. And I think, do we want to go into like, okay. Yeah. I think that like, I didn't really feel like I could choose. Really, it's just like.
Were you dedicated as a baby? Do you know?
Oh yeah.
Or baptized as a baby?
Yeah, I was baptized as a baby.
Yeah.
And then in like when I was like 7-ish, I think I went through like the whole like catechism thing, which I don't know if you know what that is.
Can you explain it to our audience? Some people might not know. Yeah.
Okay. To be fair, I was like 7, so I don't think this is gonna be accurate.
This is not 100% accurate.
Yeah.
This is just from what you remember.
Yeah. So yeah, I was doing the catechism thing, which is my understanding of like just my experience of it. I don't know really necessarily what it symbolizes, but it was basically like once a week we would go to this like class with like other kids, and we would like learn stuff that was like relating to like Catholicism. But honestly, most of what I remember is just like hanging out with people, because like you're like 7, you're just like hanging out. Yeah. And it was my choice to go, but my reason for wanting to do catechism was really weird, because as a 7-year-old, I was so excited that the people who went through catechism and then had there's like a ceremony afterwards where you're like at the front of a church and you have like a sponsor with you, and then you sort of like I guess it's like a dedication or some sort of thing like that. And I just wanted my name to be in the bulletin. It was really bad, but it's like, I don't know. I think that's a testament to like as a 7-year-old, like you don't know what's going on.
You don't.
Yeah, and like they don't really explain it to you. So like I don't remember anything I learned really, except I think I remember one time I was in a class where the teacher told us that puppies don't have souls and they don't go to heaven. Everyone in the class was so upset because they're all like children, right? They're like, puppies don't go to heaven. What are you talking about?
Also, first off, puppies, like animals, they don't get that choice to like believe anything. So why would you even just assume they don't go to heaven?
I don't know.
You know what? I think all animals go to heaven. This is my opinion, because like they can't choose anything. They don't have the capability to choose these things. You know what I mean? Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Side note. Just continue. Sorry.
Yeah. So So then, yeah. I don't know. It was just like I don't really remember it, and I feel like something that really interested me, like going to your church, was that it felt like people understood what was happening, and that like going through like being baptized was like a choice, and like a very like you're very aware of what you're doing, which I think is important, because I feel like it's really not fair to like have that expectation on like a 7-year-old to understand like what they're committing to and understand like the importance of it, right?
It is a lot to take in. This is a side note, because I hear my nephew, just to let you guys know, my nephew is upstairs, so you might hear the occasional scream or laugh because he's adorable. But anyways, side note, it's so funny you were talking about baptism, because at my old church, I did feel this weird pressure. I think a lot of people got baptized when they were 16. And I think back when I was 16, I'm not an adult yet. Like I still was trying to figure out personally my own faith and if I believed in God or not. But like that's probably not just me, right? Like I think like I understand there's this pressure, and I remember I think out of all my brothers, I was the only one who didn't get baptized at 16, because I was like, I don't know if I believe, and I'm not gonna get baptized just because you tell me to. I'm so courageous, guys.
That's good.
I just felt I was wrong, right? I was like, I'm not gonna proclaim something I don't fully believe in.
Yeah.
So I didn't get baptized until I was 20. So a couple years later, when I finally kind of figured out, some of the internal stuff, and that's literally my whole podcast, right? But I just like, it's just a weird thing for me at my church. When I think back on it, it was totally just a cultural thing to like get baptized at 16, and I'm like, that's not what baptism's about. And I mean, to be fair, I can't speak on every single person who got baptized. Maybe they did have an experience with God and Jesus that they wanted to get baptized at that age. But a lot of people that I know who got baptized don't even go to church anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it's like, it's such a huge decision, but we can't. Something fell and I got distracted. You can't like expect a child, a baby,
Mm-hmm.
or even a teenager to like fully conceptualize and understand what they're doing. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what is so tough for me, but it's because like I just saw a lot of things in my old church or other churches even that are just so not, it's not even like faith based or like biblically sound, it's just culturally pressured.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me angry sometimes, right? Because I'm like, I was taught all these things that are actually not biblically sound,
Right.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's really frustrating as an adult knowing that I was taught that and that people are going to continue that because they're not taking their own time to educate themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually known people who got baptized as a baby
Mm-hmm.
and then rebaptized as an adult because they were like, no, I'm making my decision as an adult now because I'm
Right.
actually making the decision. I'm not just like automatically, given a free pass because I was baptized as a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like they can't even make a decision by themselves, and it should be your own decision if you want to have that relationship with God or not.
Mm-hmm.
So my another question for me is like, because you were mentioning that you grew up in the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
Did you remember feeling any kind of pressure or like expectation in your childhood from that?
Yeah, a little bit. And I guess like it came out when I would like ask my mom like questions or tell her I was like feeling uncomfortable with certain things, and then her answer was like, oh, you just have to believe and pray about it, which for me like was like, this like doesn't make sense. Is that all there is? Like I just have to believe, and that like I don't know what that means,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how to feel strong in my belief when like I feel like there's no answers and there's nothing specific for me to like hang on to. Yeah, and I guess like I don't know. I feel like I was mostly there because of like my whole family was going there and stuff. And eventually I stopped going because I had this interaction with somebody, which is like, honestly, it's like a pretty small thing. But like thinking back on it now, I understand why it made me so upset. And it was like, we do like communion. We do that like every Sunday, like every time we go to church.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah. And so there's like a certain, like it's very, I guess, particular with the way that it's done. And it's like you go up, you have your hands like positioned in a certain way, and then I might be remembering this incorrectly, but I feel like there's like a certain hand you're supposed to pick up like the bread with, and then you have to eat it in front of a person who gives it to you, and you have to say amen. And so I did that. I did all that stuff, and then I said amen, but I guess I said it like really quietly or something. And the person who was giving me the bread was like, amen. And then I walked away, and I was like, this is like very like passive aggressive and like judgmental tone of voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it, they just didn't hear me.
Yeah.
And I think I stopped going after that. And when I was talking to my fiance about like that experience, I think what had upset me and what makes more sense in like Christianity for me is that it's less based on like following like certain ways that certain like ceremonies are done specifically, and more so like the meaning of it, and like there can be some variation
Mm-hmm.
on like how things are done, and it's not just very rigid, you have to follow this formula, otherwise you're doing it incorrectly and you're being disrespectful. Which I think I really appreciate, and it makes more sense to me than just like following like a set of things that you don't really understand why you're doing them, but it's like that's just the way it's done. I like really knowing like what everything means and understanding which parts of it are actually important.
It's funny as you were saying that how in our faith, like, is a lot more about meaning and less so about following these rules. And one of my biggest frustrations was that sometimes churches just become about rules when the Bible isn't necessarily about that. Like, there are things in the Bible that warn us about consequences, or give us convictions about things, or whatever the case is. It's like I see it like a guidebook rather than a rule book, because it's not. Being a Christian is literally believing that Jesus is your Lord and Savior, confessing that you're a sinner, and then the greatest commandments are love God and love your neighbor. That's it. But for me, growing up in my old church, like, it just felt like if I did something wrong, it like took a mark off of my like Christianity. But that's literally not the point of our faith. The point of our faith is that we are human beings. So if we're human beings already, we're already flawed, and we're always going to make mistakes. But what's important is that how we better ourselves, become more Christ-like. But we will never be completely Christ-like because we are human first. And so like what's interesting to me is like, as somebody who came to our church later on, for you to just acknowledge like, oh yeah, it's like less so about rules, about the meaning of behind things and why we do it. And as a Christian, this is why we do things. Like, for me, it's like, why don't other people see that? Like, especially the leaders or older generation people just kind of do things because things were done the way they were. And for me, it's like, that's so frustrating because they're not thinking about why they're doing something, and then they get mad when we change things up. Like, we were quite young, our choir, and we did a lot of pretty crazy things. They were never completely like out of the way of faith, but sometimes we would do things like, we would do a summer concert where we sang a secular song, but the secular song had great meaning, and you can't say that God can't speak through that. Right? Like, that secular song could speak to many people, even me as a Christian, because that song spoke to me in a lot of ways that I felt, but also speak to many other people in the church, or many people who aren't Christians in the audience, or, and that's what was so frustrating, was like, why can't we get over this little super detailed expectation that you want us to follow versus, wow, we're bringing people into our church. Like, people are stepping into our church to listen to us, to listen to a 5-minute sermon, to hear God's music. Like, and a secular song could have been influenced by a Christian person. You just never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, like, it's, for me, reassuring to be like, wow, there are people like Rosanna, who acknowledge the difference, or acknowledge that it's not, the Christian faith isn't about just following rules.
Yeah.
Right? It's about, these are things that, to be aware of, and these are some things that could happen because of that.
Right.
But we're Jesus and God are not going to shame you and hate you because of that.
Yeah.
They acknowledge and recognize that we're human, and we just live on, we what we call, quote unquote, like Satan's earth or whatever. We live on earth, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, it's a random thought.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I would have realized that without talking to my fiance, because I think I just knew that that it upset me, but for some reason, something about how I was treated with that exchange, and and we talked about it, and then we talked about like some of the differences between like Catholicism and Christianity. So yeah, that definitely, I did not realize that on my own.
Okay, that's good. That's good. But I'm just glad that you even being told that, and be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it's like, if I was doing something, I don't know, incorrect or doing something that wasn't healthy,
Mm-hmm.
I would want someone to approach me and tell me,
Right.
and so I could understand what's going on rather than
Mm-hmm.
don't tell me what to do. You're wrong. You're younger than me.
Yeah.
Like, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
And especially when there are multiple people seeing it,
Mm-hmm.
that's a sign. Just like if like a lot of people approach you about something that you're doing, they don't see that it's healthy,
Mm-hmm.
then that's something you need to think about.
Yeah.
You know, if it's one person, then okay, maybe they don't really know. But if it's like multiple people, it's kind of like the affirming side of things, where it's like, hey, like, we're noticing these things, like maybe just be aware of that. Like, I think that's a sign.
Yeah.
Just saying. I hope you've been enjoying the conversation I've been having with Rosanna, just talking a little bit about our upbringing in church, and I hope that this just spreads light on the different experiences in churches. And I know it doesn't say about everyone's experiences, but I hope that you can resonate with some of my points. If you'd like to support this podcast, you can find it on Instagram and on YouTube at The Open Closet Media. If you'd like to support me personally, you can find me on my Instagram at jmkpoon. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. But yeah, so my question to you now is like, so you joined our church choir and fellowships and stuff in 2016 and kind of continued going on and off now till now.
Mm-hmm.
But what really, like, my question is like, what was there things that kind of drew you in, like, at all? Like, were there moments of like our church or experiences in our church that kind of like brought you back, in a way brought you back to church?
I mean, I would say like the community aspect, because I didn't really have I guess I had that initially when I was younger, because I went to a smaller Catholic church. But like I moved and then I went to like a big church where, as far as I could tell, people didn't really know each other. It was just kind of like, maybe there was more there, but it didn't really feel like a tight-knit community setting, because there's just so many people. So definitely like the community being involved and like singing together and feeling like everyone was like very welcoming and cared about each other. And yeah, I guess that's like how I started going more. And then I started to date my fiance, and we would talk about like Christianity a lot, and I knew it was important to him, so I wanted to try to go a few times. And yeah, and it was nice, and I really liked having like community and knowing that, I don't know, it just felt very like warm and like it felt good to be there. Yeah. I
was gonna say we did, and we definitely had a really good crew. And to our Dia friends, hello, we miss you, rest in peace, Dove. But I think we had a good group of believers and non-believers. But we were like very safe and open about things.
Yeah.
And I don't feel, I hope no one felt pressured. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like we pressured people to believe. It was more like, hey, like, let's have a discussion let's talk about it, because I think that's more important. Like, even as a teacher, I think one of the things I really wanted to do wasn't, as I remember telling my students, I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm here to challenge your belief and for you to make a decision.
Right.
Because it's not, in the end, your faith is your choice, not mine, and not your parents. Like, you can't be a Christian just because your parents told you to be. That you had to ultimately decide. So I'm going to challenge that, or try to challenge that, as we learn about these things. And you know, I thought that's just something that I wish I had, like, just an opportunity to challenge, you know, like, an opportunity to ask questions, because like, even one of this is silly, but like, you know, as a kid we were told these Bible stories, and we were just told all these people were like heroes, and like, you know, stuff like that. And like, but really, in reality, these people were like pretty messed up or pretty stupid. Like, and I was like, why aren't we being taught that. We're just taught that God used these amazing, perfect people, which is not the case. Like if you really think back, even on the lineage of Jesus,
Yeah.
like Rahab was a prostitute, like outcast of society, right? Like, but God used her and many other people to bring Jesus to our world, and it's like we forget that. Like, we forget that literally just humans that God used to bring Jesus into the world. That I think that's a crazy beautiful thing. And yet we still have this weird high standard of expectations for everybody to fall to be a perfect Christian, a perfect human, which is literally impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, just rants on and on, Josh. Yeah. But no, anyway, I'm really glad that you felt safe, you know, in our community, because I know that some people haven't. And I know that some people were definitely scared off or pushed away from our church or community. And so we're glad that you stuck around and that we had a good crew. Really, really good crew. Yeah. I was going to say, oh, did your, because as you were going back to church, did your family ever have a reaction to that at all? Like,
no, my family's very non-confrontational.
Classic.
Yeah. So it was kind of just like, I don't know. Like I don't know if my mom ever said it, but I assume she was just happy that I was going to a church in general. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a question?
No, I was just thinking because I used to go with them to their church like on like holidays and stuff.
Easter and all that stuff.
Yeah. And there would like I was starting to lean away from doing that at the time because like every time I would go, they would talk about people who just come to church for the holidays, and they would be like, look, the church is so full, but these people like aren't here every other day of the year. And I'm like, this is my like little bit of time when I could be like exposed to the faith because I'm coming here to support my family, and now I just feel like I don't want to be here. So I don't know if that could be handled in like a different way, but that was definitely something that made me really uncomfortable.
I can't speak for the Catholic Church or church in general, but that's aside. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if like your church is suddenly filled on certain holidays, that says a lot. Like, is
like
it
about the church?
About the church or community?
More so than like the people?
I think so.
Okay.
You know, like I think like if people wanted to go to church more, they would go because they feel comfortable and like or like wanting to go. Yeah. But if they're only there, because I know a lot of people who do this who just go on holidays. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
like you would have other reasons to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like I don't know. Like God always pulled me back to church, whether that is through community, because I had a huge community in my church. I grew up with a lot of people there. But you know, always spoke to me through music and worship team and leading choir and stuff, right? So he always brought me back, and whether that is just like because I was a pastor's kid and you know I was expected to serve more. I don't think that was necessarily the case, because I still continue to do things even when I was struggling and having doubts about my faith and if I believed, right? Because I was struggling so much with my sexuality at that time. This is a side note. I think you mentioned this earlier, but I forgot to bring it up. But you know, just the idea of like when you are in a faith, that doubt is actually okay.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's not. It's not wrong, and we're humans. We're curious people. We want to know everything, but God is all-knowing, that we believe in, and He knows what's going to happen or what's best for us. And sometimes we have those doubts of like, how is God going to provide, or how blah blah blah, right? But having doubts is okay, because it challenges you to try to find those answers that we're looking for.
Right.
But it's not bad to have doubts.
Yeah.
That's what faith is. Faith is believing like without, I don't know, sometimes affirmance or whatever the word is, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think and I don't know if like this was like a personal thing or if it was like instilled in me. But it felt like whenever I had doubt, it was like you can't do that. Like that's not okay. That's like disrespectful or something. So I just I just felt like, okay, I guess if I have doubt, that means I don't believe. So, and then
just because you were saying that when you were like talking to your mom about stuff, she would just be like, just believe.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Or because I am like, I think a lot about like life in like a very like nihilistic way sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think like whenever I would bring stuff up like that to my mom, it was kind of like, why are you thinking like that? Just believe in God and just pray about it, and then you won't be stressed about like being like having an existential crisis anymore. And it's like it's not that simple. Like there has to be more discussion. Like I feel like everyone has like their personal relationship with God, and I think my mom's is very much like trust. And I think for me, like, I don't understand how that works without questioning. Yeah. So I think knowing that questioning is okay is also like very helpful for me.
This is my opinion, probably many people's opinions, but ignorance or choosing to not search or find those answers or just using an excuse to be like, no, I'll just believe whatever, I think it's wrong. Because I think God wants us to search for answers and find those answers to be like, okay, we believe in you, right? Because think about even just in the beginning of time, right? Like when Adam and Eve were born. I know this is the subject that many people talk about. Yeah. But like he ultimately knew that they would choose to eat the fruit, right? And in a way, like it led to, like, if they didn't eat the fruit, then they would just basically be, in a way, robots, right? They're not choosing God. But because of that, people had to learn how to choose God and choose to follow Him. And I talk a lot about this in the beginning of the Bible with a whole bunch of laws and rules and all those things, like in Leviticus and all that stuff. But honestly, it was just, God needed to see if these people believed and followed Him, right? Like they had to choose to believe in Him, Yeah. And so the same thing with questions and things that make us uncomfortable. I think we do need to, it's a sign for us to find out why we feel uncomfortable about that stuff. Right. Or why does that make us feel weird or fearful? Because we need to figure those things out, right? Because I think that if you don't deal with those things, it will come out in a more negative way, whether that is passed on to your children, whether it is projected onto your children, whether it's insecurity or mistrust or whatever. Like if you feel any kind of those weird, like, uncomfortable things, I think God wants us to dive into that. Because that's, our world has so many things that are happening that make all of us question, like, what is happening? Why is this happening? Why are people treating people like this? And I think it's something that we need to take time to reflect about. It's like how history repeats history, right? Like, but we had to reflect on those things because then it'll happen again. But people just kind of be like, ignore like maybe what actually happened or what was the reason why what ever happened in historical events. Then it just happens again because we're not thinking about it. Yeah. But it's just, I know that I think people are just scared to find out that they are flawed or find out that they are judging people incorrectly or go learn something. Go figure things out. Like, I think it's really important. Like, even in a season of rest, me processing all my past things, I've had to come to realization and reality with a lot of stuff. That I hate myself a lot more than I thought I ever did. You're right. And that's been really hard because I'm like, that's why I act this way, or this is why I respond in this way. It's because I'm scared of, being myself in front of this person, or scared to face the fact that maybe I do have some anger issues, or whatever the case is. Like, I don't want to fully recognize it. But if I don't deal with it now, the chances of it projecting onto the next generation, or my future children, or etc., is going to be so much higher. Yeah,
for sure.
Deal with it now. So I came out to you in 2016. So you kind of been you've been a good friend of mine ever since that time. You were also around when our good friend passed away. And you also were around when I came out, like actually publicly came out. And my question to you is, like, you got to see, in a way, a lot of Christians in a pretty dark time.
Yeah.
Did that help you in terms of faith, in terms of how accountability of faith, and like making it more realistic compared to your past experiences with like Catholicism? Did anything change when you saw me go through certain processes or anything? Like, there's a lot of questions there, but
I guess, and maybe this is more like a specific question to you, and like I worked on, like, I did the animation.
Oh yes, sorry. Yeah. Rosanna is the one behind the beautiful masterpiece of an animation that many of my friends appreciated and loved, and made my friends' parents cry.
It did.
Many people cried.
Oh my gosh, that's really. That's
I didn't tell you that.
Hear. No, you didn't.
Sorry, I should have. Yeah, many people cried because of that.
Oh, well, yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Yes.
Yay.
Yes, tears.
They cried. Well, I'm glad it reached people. That's really great.
I remember when you shared it to me, and we'll go on to your question. Remember when you shared it to me? I remember being like, yes, this is exactly, and combining with my friend's song, Hi Marie, like, it was just like, this is literally, like, this is like, if anyone could take anything out of this, it's that animation. It's like, right, this is literally my life, and in a nutshell. And if, like, people cannot understand, like, hopefully are not empathetic about this, like, then there's something else I can do. You know what I mean? This is literally just me sharing my testimony, my struggle, and how I still stuck to the faith, and how that all those things made me stay in the faith.
Right.
But I remember just watching it and being like, yeah, this is what I wanted. Like something simple, but like right to the heart.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
I guess my question was, maybe more specifically, how you find that, like, I guess, like, understanding your sexuality helped you find your faith. Yeah, because for me, like, yeah, as I said earlier, that, like, never occurred to me that those things would ever cross. So yeah.
Same. Okay. I was taught that at a very young age, and heard sad stories about, people, I mean, still now, a lot less now than back then, like people being persecuted, all those things in different countries, and or even just taught that it was just literally just a sin.
Yeah.
And so I also felt exactly the way you felt, like, it just, those two things never mixed in my head. So I would say that it was different kind of phases. So in high school, it was I had these feelings towards guys. That's wrong. It's wrong for me to have any kind of feeling, to feel any kind of attraction or love towards somebody. That is a sin. That's what I thought. So literally, me even caring for someone, I thought it was wrong.
Yeah.
which is pretty messed up because it's such a natural thing to do, to care for someone. And like when you like somebody and you feel that love towards somebody, that's a normal feeling. But I told myself that it was not normal, that it was wrong, and that so I just deprived myself of feeling emotions. Just generally, I think like even anger and sadness. Like I look back on it, and there's a reason why I have had so much hard time processing emotions, right? And I think I'm sadly a more bitter and angry person now because it just finally all came out. But then after that, it was in university where I kind of started to be okay with understanding that it was fine to feel things.
Yeah.
Like literally just feeling a human emotion was that next phase. So then the next thing was the faith aspect. Like why is it that because I knew I was gay, why couldn't I be a Christian? Like why didn't it make sense to me? Like, or I was taught that I couldn't be a Christian because I was gay. But a lot of it, like the deep rooted thing, was that I thought I had to be perfect. I had to be this perfect human being to be a Christian, which is false, which is not right. Like the literally reason why you can become a Christian is because you recognize that you're broken.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
And it's weird that like I feel like people who like have no experience with Christianity too, like from an outside perspective, think that is the expectation.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's just culturally brought out like that, like people just being taught that, but it's literally incorrect. And unfortunately, when people are taught that perfection aspect, it makes them super hype, like critical, mean people. Like Christians especially. Like I'm sure we all heard stories of Christians just being assholes, you know, right? And then so that was kind of I recognized that was my issue, was that I thought I had to be perfect, but it was because I knew I was broken that I wanted to become a Christian, because I wanted to be a better person. And that my sexuality wasn't my identity. That's what I recognized. It was part of my identity, but it wasn't my whole identity. And that my identity was in my faith as a Christian, same as I'm Asian, same as I'm Chinese, same as I'm gay. So that was kind of the next phase, and that's kind of when I met you, right after that period of time.
Yeah.
And so after that, it was the next phase was knowing I'm a Christian, knowing it's okay for me to feel, but then having feelings for people and being exhausted because I knew that it wasn't going to work out. And this is like multiple times.
Yeah.
And so that kind of brought me back to that. Is it right for me to feel these things if it feel like it never works out? And going into that hole of like being exhausted of feeling these natural things, but being kind of told subtly that it wasn't right because of rejection.
Yeah.
You know? And so that kind of went on. And then pandemic hit. That's kind of the next phase where I had to sit in like all the trauma and struggles I never really thought about. And that was a lot of self-hatred. And that was a lot of instilled homophobia that I was taught as a child, and I kept believing, and it's still in me. I'm gonna be honest. Like I still have that. My nephew, oh no, he's crying. Was that God loves me, and it says so in the Bible, and no one can say that he does not love me as a child of God. And I believe I am a Christian. No one can ever argue that God does not love me. But I recognize that people just hated me. People are cruel and mean and hurtful. But it was never God. God blessed me with many loving, caring, supportive people in my life. And I see that all throughout my different chapters in my life, right? But it was never him. It was the other people that used hatred as a way to demonize me or make me feel like that I was not wanted or make me feel insecure. And that was the next phase, you know, like, and now it was just me coming out, you know, again, or publicly, was that kind of like that, in a way, affirmation. When I remember telling people I was doing this, they were just like, we're so excited for you. We're so ready to have this conversation because we can't ignore it anymore. Like, our society is talking about it. It's all over media. Like, stop pretending it's not a thing. We've been around since the time of Jesus. Like, I want to be honest. Like, we've been around. And people are just not wanting to talk about reality. That maybe, you know, no, not maybe. We are children of God. We all are made in his image. And you can't say, I'm not made in his image because of a sexuality that I did not choose. Why would I choose to hate myself and to go through all that stuff? Like, it was a really dark time. And for people to not recognize that, for people to think that I chose it, I think they're pretty stupid.
Yeah.
Like, why would anybody in this community, in the LGBTQ plus community, sorry, I can't say that fast because of my lisp, like, why would they choose to hate themselves? That's not what God ever would want. And I can say that confidently, that God wants us to learn how to love ourselves and to be genuine and to be joyful and to be loving, to be kind to people, not just to other people, but also to ourselves, because I don't think we talk about that enough, because there's a lot of self-hatred happening in our community, in our cultures. And so it was just like a whole bunch of different phases that made me recognize that my faith was always important to me. It was just wrestling the thoughts of other people. Because I kind of mixed God's thoughts with people's thoughts, and I think that was not the right move.
Yeah.
So it's kind of how I got to where I am now, where it's, no, I'm a Christian. Like, I'm confidently a Christian. Do I mess up? Hell yeah, I do. Like, it's normal. I slip up. I, get angry. I sometimes lie to protect people. Whatever sins. I mess up. I'm a human being, right? I'm gonna always be hard on myself for that. But that's not the point. The point that God wants us is for us to recognize those things and to work towards being better at it, and better at recognizing it and dealing with it and being better people. Yeah. Where nowhere in the Bible does it say this criteria that you can't be gay. No, literally nowhere. If I don't see it, someone's tell me. It's literally nowhere. And that's what's frustrating to me. It was a long spiel, but yeah. Did I answer your question? Kind of.
Yeah, I think so.
Did I answer your question? Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
I remember when we were talking about this podcast trailer. This is a while ago, because I was thinking about this for a long time, probably a year before we even posted it.
Yeah.
And I remember just like telling you these scenes I wanted, and these people and the feelings and the things that people were telling me or told me, and like if you look at the video, there is a page where a whole bunch of quotes come in. Those are from real people. Did you remember just like when I was telling you when you were making it? I'm sure as an artist and animator that you wanted to portray these feelings that I had.
Yeah.
Right? Did you I don't know, any kind of feelings that came out of that, or any like because I guess for some of those things I never really told you or many people actually about it.
Yeah.
So do you remember when you were making that, or as we were discussing, that any thoughts come up for you?
I mean, I guess I was surprised that people had been so like blunt with saying such hurtful things, and even the things that were like nice, like I can definitely see how that, you know, could leave a lot of pain. And yeah, I wanted it to have like, I guess, like the impact of like hearing these things and then having them like echoing in your head and becoming overwhelming and sort of taking over, so you like can't think clearly anymore, and it's just what other people are saying. So that's sort of like the vibe that I was going for with that scene. Yeah.
Did you, when you were making the animation, did you ever like struggle with, like, in a way, it's like, kudos to artists because they had to think of someone else's perspective sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like, did you ever find it was difficult to, like, it's like, oh, I wonder how I want to make this scene to, like, I know Josh kind of felt this way, like, yeah,
it was definitely difficult because there were some like artistic choices where I was like, oh, this scene would look interesting if I did it like this, and then I would do it and it looked cool, but I would like think about the feeling associated with it, and I would be like, I don't think this is accurate, and even if it looks cool, I think I have to get rid of it and like do it differently because it's not like creating the sort of like mood that we want for this scene. And it was definitely very difficult because obviously it's very personal, your story, and I wanted to make sure that like it was accurate to how you're feeling. So yeah.
Well, you did a great job.
Thank you.
And like I said earlier, I remember just being like, yeah, this is what I wanted. It's just like, I wanted it to be simple in a way, but just have a lot of meaning behind it. And I know it wasn't a simple job. It took her many hours to do that, but I spoke to people, right? And I just really hope, like, I know I've been, this podcast has been really cool because it's been able to reach a lot of, you know, old friends, old high school mates, other strangers. But like that trailer is like, that's the launch, right? Like, hopefully that speaks to people. And you know what, in the end, like, I know I spoke a lot about my frustrations with, you know, my church and stuff, but I just want to get to a place where we can just be empathetic with one another. Yeah. You know, that like our faith isn't just about these rules or these expectations, right? It's about your heart, right? And I already knew like posting this wasn't gonna be all sunshine and rainbows. Like, I've had, you know, some things that happen, right? But I just hope that it starts a conversation, and I hope that people just start talking about it, and I hope that we find spaces or create spaces for the next generation to talk about it, because we can't ignore it anymore. But why don't we, instead of ignore it and shun, why don't we create a safe space for us to discuss and to navigate it together? You know? Yeah. And I mean, if this trailer pops off, you're gonna be one of those people that help with that, right? And I think that's super important, and I'm really thankful for just you helping me with that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. And I hope that, I mean, you can use that for any kind of portfolio. just let me know.
Thank you.
Just looking at the time here, is there any other questions that you have for me, or any other thoughts?
Well, I guess something interesting that came up for me, it's not a question, but it's I showed my mom the animation when I was done working on it, and her reaction really surprised me, because it was very much like her expressing being very upset that the church isn't accepting of people who are gay and who are, you know, like not heterosexual. And like, I was just very touched that she was like really upset. Like, she kept talking about it for a very long time, and I was really like proud that this was something that she cared so much about. And like, I wouldn't have known if I didn't show her your animation and your story. And it obviously really struck a chord with her. So
and I'm really happy to hear that, because generally your mom's generation is that generation like that's struggling with this a lot, actually. And even in our generation, right? Like there's some people that are having struggles with that, but for it to speak to her like that, I just hope that it speaks to other people in her generation.
Yeah.
And like I said, like for me, it's like, it's about the heart, it's about empathy, right? It's about recognizing and understanding that, oh, Josh was really hurt and has been hurting for a long time. Maybe I should see how he's doing, or maybe we should have a discussion about the things that he went through so we can create a better, safer community and environment for people.
Yeah.
Rather than, oh, he's gay, bye-bye. Like,
yeah.
That's for me just in a way ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
That's not okay. I don't think that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're literally ignoring the fact that I've been hurt by people and have had a lot of self-hatred, and just elevating the fact that this thing is wrong.
Yeah.
That's it. And you're just ignoring everything else. But yeah, I know my parents watched it. I know they really liked it. I know other, church parents watched it, and they are commenting, being like, thanks for sharing like hearts and all that stuff. So like, I know I spoke to so many different generations, and I hope that it continues to do that. And I'm hoping that this becomes a podcast or something that people can share with people. To just be like, hey, this is somebody who's been through a lot of this similar experiences, but also his experience is very different from maybe what yours is, but maybe he has other people in his podcast that might be in a similar situation, or just like even just like me talking to my friends.
Yeah.
Like that, I have friends, surprisingly, that just, were part of my journey and have had different perspectives on my journey, or have been a part of different chapters of my life that may speak to that whoever's listening. Yeah. Yeah. Any last thoughts, comments? No.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me.
I really appreciate, Rosanna has done a lot for me, not just this animation. She's also done logos. She's also done things for my other podcast. She's a very talented artist. So if you want to check her out, you can find her at, which one do you use?
We'll just put it.
We'll put it here. I'll put it in the
guess
description.
If you're only listening, you will
not
know.
see it, but you'll find it online. Yeah, she's very talented, a very good friend of mine. Amazing singer too. So if people are auditioning, sorry, I was like putting you out there.
Plugging you all of my interests.
Go. But yeah, I'd like to end each episode by saying that I appreciate you and I love you. And then we hug it out.
We hug it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, Oscar. Thanks, friend.
Thank you.
Peace.
Peace.
This conversation with Rosanna has been insightful and eye-opening in some ways for me, as I just talk about the struggles and frustrations that we both had in the church and our upbringings. And I hope that you found some light in it. I hope this is not spreading hate. That's just a way for us to just raise awareness of the things that churches can do to people, and there are many good things as well. If you'd like to support Rosanna and her amazing artwork, you can find her on Instagram at Anasaurus_. That's ANNASORUS_. If you'd like to support me in a different way, I started a Patreon page where you can get exclusive content, behind the scenes, and all that fun stuff. There are 3 tiers currently. The first tier is just for those who just want to support the podcast, and the other 2 tiers include access to bonus content. If you'd like to become a Patreon, you can find it at patreon.com/theopenclosetmedia. I truly appreciate your support through all these episodes, and I hope that you're excited for new episodes with new guests. Just know that you are wonderfully and beautifully made in God's image. God loves you, and I love you. I'll see you next time.